Hello Internet, welcome to my comprehensive guide on how to string a tennis racket. I've been stringing rackets for as long as I can remember. I used to work at a pro shop, and then I also strung rackets for my college's Division 1 tennis team. And so today, I would like to give you a guide and also some tips and tricks on how you can string your first tennis racket. First step is to mount your racket properly. Make sure that all the mounts are centered and that your racket is properly secured in place. Now, when you first take the strings out of the package, make sure you walk the strings out like I am doing here, because if you just let them go, after you clip the tie, they're going to tangle and it's going to be a pain trying to untangle them. Now, for those who use a reel, you will need about 40 feet of strings. Now for me, because I've strung so many rackets, I know that 7 full arm length from fingertip to fingertip is about 40 feet. Now what you can do is you can cut the 40 feet of string in half and create 2 sets of 20 feet string. This way you can do what we call a two-piece, where you string the mains and the crosses separately. I personally do not do this just because it saves time stringing one piece, and also I don't string my mains and crosses at different tensions like a lot of you do. So if you don't string them at different tensions, you don't have to cut them and you can just do it in one go. Now before we start stringing, what I like to do first is I like to cut the tip of the string. I'll cut it at an angle with the clippers to create a sharp edge, and this way it'll slide into the holes much easier. Now before we start stringing, we have to identify whether we have to start from the bottom first or we start from the top. To determine this, you're first going to look on the bottom of your racket on this lower grommet and determine if there are 6 holes or 8 holes. And as you can see on this pure drive, there are 6 holes. Then there are some rackets, like this Percept 97, that has 8 holes. Now if there are 6 holes, you'll start from the top and the strings will wrap around the center hoop on the bottom. And if there are 8 holes, you'll start from the bottom and the strings will wrap around the center hoop on the top. Now that you have your string through your first loop, make sure that both sides of the strings are even, so that way you have enough strings to string both the left and the right side of the racket. First thing you want to do is you want to clamp one of the strings furthest away from the tensioning mechanism. So here I'll clamp the string, and you want to make sure that your clamp is closest to the racket as possible. You don't want to clamp all the way out here because then it leaves too much slack between the racket and the clamp. This slack can cause a lot of inconsistencies in tension across the racket, and we know in tennis, consistency is key. Now once you clamp the top clamp, do not forget the bottom clamp. It is just as important. So now you will tension the string that is not clamped. Pull. And once it's tensioned, you take this clamp and you clamp closest to the grommet as possible, like this. And we always clamp the top and then clamp the bottom, and then we can release the tension. A quick side note, before you pull tension, you want to make sure that the string that is clamped is straight and not crooked, and also at the same height level as the string that is being pulled. Although this is not a big deal breaker, we're going for perfection here, so we want to make sure everything is perfect so that we have one less thing to blame when we shank a forehand. Now we got our first string tensioned, we'll just continue along the racket on the same string that we just tensioned. Another thing I notice a lot when I've seen some people string is that when the string comes out of the hole, they'll go over the racket like this, and then they'll pull tension with the string sitting on top of the racket. Again, this is another minor detail, but we're going for perfection here. When the string goes over the racket, the tension mechanism doesn't pull the string in a straight line, which causes inconsistencies in tension. And it's probably why a lot of you are shanking forehand and backhands. So the correct way to do this is to go under the racket, so that way the tension mechanism can pull the string in a straight line. And then we clamp the string closest to the racket as possible, and do not forget to tighten the bottom clamp, because if you forget, you have to start all over. And now we just rinse and repeat. I like to break this down. Usually I'll do 4-4, so I'll do 4 strings on one side and then I'll do 4 strings on the other side. We can do 3-3, but I would not do more than 4. Like I wouldn't do 5 or string the whole side and string the other side, just because pulling strings, you can imagine this racket is being strung at 54 pounds, adds a lot of tension on the racket. So you want to be nice to your frames, so you want to distribute the force evenly, and so we generally do 4-4, and then we'll come back, finish this side, and then go back to the other side. Previously we had the stick clamped, so this is tension. So before you unclamp this, we pull tension. Once tension is held, then we can unclamp, and then we can continue. Okay, now here is where it gets really tricky. You can see here, there's 3 grommets pretty close to each other. 1, 2, 3. Now be very careful. If you ever notice 2 grommets this close to each other, the odds are that the strings will go in different directions. So if I try to put the string here to continue stringing my mains that goes this way, you'll see first of all the clamp is in the way, so that tells you something is wrong. But also if you pull this main across, these 2 strings will be so close to each other that just probably just feels wrong. So use your common sense here, which means that this is probably a cross going this way, and so you'll skip this one and then you go over here. Go to the last one. Here you can see, same thing, this grommet, if I try to put the string, it's real tight, tells you something's wrong. So it's probably a cross, and it is way too close to this one. So we skip this and we go here. Now, because this is the last main, we have to apply a little bit extra poundage. So on my machine, there is a knot function for me, and if I press it, it jumps my tension up by about 5 pounds. And if you are using a drop weight or a crank, you can just manually add 5 pounds to the tension mechanism. And we do this because, as you'll see, when we tie the knot, there's always going to be a little bit of slack left over, which means that we're losing tension when we tie the knot. And so to compensate for this, we just add 5 extra pounds. And because we're on the internet, I know some of you are going to say, well, your machine added 5.5 pounds and you said 5 pounds. Yeah, well, good luck adjusting for half a pound on a drop weight or a crank. So just use 5 pounds. Now once you have tensioned your last main, what we'll do is a tie-off knot. To start the knot, you'll insert the end of your string into one of the bigger grommets, as you see I have done here. Now the string will come out either on the left side or the right side of the main, and you see here my string is on the left side of this main. And so because it's on the left, what you'll do is you'll go over and under the main that shares the same hole as the string. And once you do that, you'll see you have created a loop, and then you'll just bring the string back around and go through the loop that you just made. And then you'll take your clamp, you'll clamp the string, and then you'll use your thumb to push in the slack that is left over on outside of the racket. And then what you'll do is you'll take the clamp with the string and you'll push out to remove the slack, and then you give it a nice firm pull towards you to tighten the knot. And then you'll just repeat this one more time. Be careful not to pull too tight on the second knot. A nice firm tug is more than enough. And then clip the strings close to the racket so there's not too much string sticking out. And then you're good to go. And then you just rinse and repeat on the other half of the racket, and you should have something that looks just like this. Now the way I did this is what they call a two-piece, meaning that you have one separate set of strings for your mains, and then you'll have another set of string for your crosses. I personally like to only string one piece, meaning that my main and crosses is just one long string. But this serves a purpose because, as you know, many players like to string their mains and crosses at different tensions. I find that it doesn't matter for me. I'm not good enough to know this difference, and and stringing one piece is just way faster because you only tie 2 knots instead of 4. So if you were to string one piece, you'll just have a short side and a long side. You do everything exactly the same, except for then you'll have one extra long piece of string left over here, and you'll just take this and you'll continue stringing the crosses. So instead of tying the knot off, you'll just insert it into the first cross on wherever the string ends, whether that's on the top or the bottom, and then from here you'll just continue your crosses. But for the purpose of this video, I will show you how to do a 2-piece. Now if you do a 1-piece, sometimes your strings will end up on the bottom and you have to string the crosses from bottom up. And that is not always ideal for rackets. Because what happens is that as you string, you're pulling tension here and you're pulling. A lot of pressure gets put onto the racket going upwards, and it is more prone to damage. Whereas if you string top down, all the tension gets pulled into the neck of the racket, and this is a very sturdy structure here, so it's less likely that you'll damage your racket. I personally have never had this issue where a racket breaks on me stringing from bottom to top, but I know some brands, they used to, if you do string from bottom to top, they'll void your warranty on your rackets. I believe like Head does that. They recommend that, or they don't want you to string bottom to top. And if you send them a cracked racket and they see that you strung from bottom to top, they'll void your warranty. So just something very minor to keep in mind. So to start your crosses, we'll use a starting clamp. And to set up the starting clamp, you'll first weave the very first cross through your racket. And to weave, all you need to do is make sure that when the cross goes through all of the mains, that they alternate between going up and under. And it doesn't matter if you start above the string or under it, but whichever way you start, you just have to make sure that your next one is the opposite. So for example, here I'm going over, so the next one I will have to go under like this. So that way you see how, wow, I didn't go under. Oh, it is under. Okay, so here it's up over this one, and then here is down under this one, and so that means this one has to be over, and then this one will be under, right? And then this one will be over, this one will be under, over, under, over, under, over, under. So, and then once you get to the other side of the hole, you can insert it into the grommet, and then you have your first cross. Now, because this is a two-piece, you don't want to just tie off a knot here and then pull tension here, because it causes a lot of, it's hard to tie a knot when there's no tension on the string. So what I like to do is we like to do a starting clamp. So that is you just take the clamp, you clamp the string closest to the grommet as possible. This is your starting clamp, and then what you can do is you can tension the other side like this. Nice, and now you have your first cross tensioned. And you come in and you try to clamp it closest to the racket as possible, tighten the top, tighten the bottom, and you're good to go. Now we know that the cross has to go up and down and alternate directions as it's going through the mains, but it also has to alternate when it's going down the racket as well. So if we look at the previous cross that we did, we can see that on this main right here, that it is going over the main, which means that when we do this cross and we get to that main, our string needs to go under. So therefore, I'll start over on this main, and by the time we get to that main, we'll be under, just like this, right? And then that means this is up, and this is down, this is up, this is down. Yeah, sorry guys, I don't usually, I know some people, I've seen people string like this and they're pretty quick at it, but I have a difficult time doing that. And generally when I weave with the tip of the string. It's all personal preference, different styles, different technique, just like how people's technique look different on the ground strokes. This is generally how I weave, is with the tip of the string. It's just how I've always done it, and it's easier for me. So I went up and down, pull the string through right here, and then you'll pull the string through. So this is very important. As you're pulling the string, you must release the tension here by sliding the strings up and down, because if you don't and you start pulling, there's a lot of, maybe not this one, but as you get down here, there's a lot of tension pulling the racket here. And so what you'll do is, if you're just pulling without diffusing the slack here, you'll create a lot of friction and you'll burn through the string. Obviously polys are more sturdier, but if you're stringing something like natural gut and you do that, yeah, it's over for you. So, and there goes $60. Good luck. Okay, perfect. Now what will I do? I'm gonna tension the string. Wrong. Well, it's not wrong, but it's actually a lot easier to weave if you weave one ahead, meaning that, see how this one is tensioned, but this one's not. And so what we'll do is we'll actually weave two strings and have them not tensioned. So there's one, and then I'll weave another one ahead. So this is down, that means that this has to go over. So we'll weave this, and it gets a lot easier to weave. Right, we'll weave this, and we'll put it in, and then we'll come back and pull the tension on this one. This, like this. Okay, done. And then you'll clamp closest to the grommet as possible. Sometimes you won't be able to get in here, and that's okay, no worries. Clamp the top, clamp the bottom, and then you'll come back and you'll pull the one that you just weaved, like this, right? Make sure that the string here doesn't type in a knot like this, and you pull, because then you pull the knot and your string is doomed. So be very, very careful. Okay, and now you have this string, right? And then we just weave one more ahead. So we go ahead like this, and because this one is up, this one has to be down, right? And and that's down, and then that means this is up, and then we go down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, 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 just like that. And then we go in, we come back, pull the tension on this one. Now, very important, that when you string, you straighten as you string. A lot of people, they'll just string and they'll keep going, and they don't straighten the strings as they're pulling tension. And what happens is that this causes your strings to smile, meaning that when you're done with your racket, all your strings will look like this, like it's smiling. And sure, that isn't like a huge issue, but you can imagine a curved string like this is a lot longer than a straight string like this, right? So as you string, let's say 54 pounds and all your strings are smiling, and as you play, your strings will, return. They'll all want to be straight because there's tension on the racket. And if all your strings are smiling, you'll lose a lot of tension on your racket. And so it will feel like your strings maybe have died a lot quicker. So always straighten as you string. Okay, so we pull through, we diffuse this friction on the racket, right? Boom, and then we go in and we just weave accordingly. This is up, so this has to be down, right? Go down and alright, and now we just continue down the racket until we're done. Now, because this clamp is free, because the string is clamped and this clamp is free, so technically we can unclamp this. And so because this clamp is free, now we can come back and tie our starting knot. So before you just unclamp this, make sure there's tension. Okay, and then you can unclamp this. You can take the clamp that was free, tie the starting knot. Don't forget to press the knot button. And then you will tie the knot just like how you tie the knot down there. The string comes out the left side, and it's always the main, never the cross, okay? Always look at this in correlation with the main. So it comes out the left side of the main, which means that this will go over the main, and then it will come under the other side and through the loop that you just made. The clamp might be in the way, but you're gonna be fine. So push in the slack here if there is any, and just give it a nice firm tug. Here, and the second knot, nice firm tug, but not too tight. Don't want to break the string. Cut the knot. Then you're good. Free to go. Alright, and then we just continue our ways. And when you get to the bottom, there's really no reason to weave one ahead anymore. Like, I didn't need to weave this one just out of habit because there's so much tension on the strings anyways. You're not really getting the benefits of the second, the weave ahead string. Now, something here that's very important is sometimes your string will overlap with other strings. So you can see here, the crosses comes out on top of the main string that sits within the grommet. So it's really important that when you go to the next cross, you also go above the next main. You can imagine if you go below it, then this cross string will basically cut across the main string that sits in the grommet. And if your strings are sharp, or if your strings are really sensitive, then there's a chance that you could break it on a mishit or something like that. Because we mishit a lot on this channel, we want to make sure that our string lasts as long as possible and that we're not just breaking strings left and right. And now when you get to the end, you'll insert the end of the string into one of the bigger grommet holes. And then you'll do a tie-off knot, just like we learned earlier, and then you're basically done. And then you gotta hit it a few times to really hear that nice fresh ping off the racket to know that you did a good job. Leave a comment if you have any questions on how to string a racket. Otherwise, see ya!